Hi! Intros are stupid and the title is self-explanatory. Yakuza, or Like a Dragon, is one of my all-time favorite video game franchises, and this seemed like a really fun video to make. Let's hope that being 7 months late to the trend doesn't stop this video from getting views, and let's also hope that nobody else has made one of these about this specific series. But most importantly, let's get started. Beginning with the earliest game in chronological order, I originally expected Yakuza 0 to either have one of the longest runs due to it being one of the more cutscene heavy games in a franchise already famous for having a lot of cutscenes, or one of the shortest runs due to the ability to skip the majority of the cutscenes. It actually ended up being somewhere in the middle. In order to reach grasp percent in Yakuza 0, I had to skip a few cutscenes, mash through some dialogue, slog through a tutorial best described as overkill, complete a trailing mission that gets interrupted by another combat tutorial, deal with the first of the game's many unskippable cutscenes, narrowly escape the public humiliation more commonly referred to as karaoke, skip even more cutscenes, find a phone booth, visit and skip through the Dojima Family HQ, sit through one last unskippable cutscene and combat tutorial before the game finally opened up enough of the map to allow me to visit Kamurocho Public Park 3, and would you look at that, some of the saddest grass textures I have ever witnessed. And it only took me 17 minutes and 45 seconds to find them. Fair warning, you guys should probably get used to seeing a lot of Public Park 3. My main strategy for finding grass in the games that started in Kamurocho is by getting to the nearest public parks as fast as I can, and Public Park 3 is the most convenient one to get to since it's so close to the main gate of Kamurocho and Kiryu's base at Serena. Next up is Yakuza 1, the oldest game in the franchise, and fun fact, I had to open my brand new, factory sealed, complete in-box copy of Yakuza 1 in order to make this video. And while factory sealed copies of Yakuza 1 aren't exactly rare or valuable or something that I'm really all that interested in owning, you kinda gotta admit, that kind of commitment deserves at the very least a like and subscribe. But even before I tore the plastic off of one of my most prized possessions, I had a feeling that Yakuza 1 would have one of the longer grasp percent runs. I mean, it is a PS2 game, and PS2 games aren't exactly known for being fast or having skippable cutscenes, and Yakuza 1 is no exception. The game opens with about 3 minutes of unskippable cutscenes before sending Kiryu down Tenkaichi Street. This is very good. Tenkaichi Street is the home of Public Park 3. A mission allowing for early entry to Tenkaichi Street could let me skip the majority of the game's early cutscenes and lead to one of the shortest grasp percent runs in the entire series. There's just one slight problem. Public Park 3 isn't here. And with the rest of Kamurocho closed off until the end of the game's first chapter, all I could do was play through the opening chapter of Yakuza 1 normally, which basically meant sitting through a lot of cutscenes interrupted by the occasional fight. Kiryu goes through a couple of combat tutorials, introduces the player to Mark Hamill, hangs out in a bar, visits his dad, gets framed for murder, meets Dilf Cop, and goes to prison. It was a very busy night. And then, 10 years later, in game years, not speedrun years, thankfully, Kiryu makes his triumphant return to Kamurocho, where just enough of the map is unlocked to visit newly constructed Public Park 3 and reach grasp percent in a whopping 39 minutes and 56 seconds. Wow, that run sure took a lot of time. Let's hope that none of the others take anywhere near that long. When I first started planning my route for Yakuza 2, I expected grasp percent to take about as long as it did in Yakuza 1, because the game is also old as balls and a PS2 game, which means it also won't have skippable cutscenes. And at first, it seemed like I was right, because Yakuza 2 opened with roughly 11 uninterrupted minutes of unskippable cutscenes. But the first playable scene takes place in a graveyard whose groundskeeper is probably dead because there are little patches of PS2 texture grass popping up all over the place. And it's a damn good thing that this place's groundskeeper went the way of Dampe, because it allowed me to reach grasp percent mere moments after I finally loaded in with a time of 11 minutes and 26 seconds. Yakuza 3 is the first game in the franchise to include skippable cutscenes, and it is also the first game on this list that takes less than 10 minutes to reach grasp percent. I'm not gonna lie, I really thought it was gonna be Yakuza 0. I also expected Yakuza 3 to be the fastest run on the entire list because I remembered it opening at Kiryu's orphanage in Okinawa. And I know for a fact that this place is absolutely surrounded by plant life. What I forgot is that once you finish skipping through all of the opening cutscenes, the game actually opens in the same graveyard as Yakuza 2. A graveyard that now has significantly better grass textures. Grass textures that allowed me to reach grass percent in less than a minute at a mere 51 seconds. And in case you were wondering, this is indeed the shortest run in the video. But my original run clocked in at about 2 minutes and 17 seconds and took me all the way to Public Park 3 because I didn't notice the grass until I went back, checked the footage, and had to do another run. Also, for my runs of Yakuza 3, 4, and 5, I played the remastered collection versions of these games, partially because I do not own a copy of Yakuza 5 because physical copies of Yakuza 5 never released outside of Japan, but mostly because recording footage on a PS3 is a bitch and a half. Also, I'm kind of trying to milk my Xbox Game Pass subscription for everything it's worth. Yakuza 4 is the first game in the series where you play as characters other than Kiryu, a trend that would continue sporadically until the series eventually replaced him completely. It's also the only game after 2 that opens with an unskippable cutscene. Why does he walk so slow? Fortunately, the majority of the game's cutscenes are skippable. Not that there are very many to begin with, and all of the dialogue is mashable. But the game's opening segment is also the most restrictive in the entire series. You quite literally can only go where the game wants you to be, and it does not want you to be in Public Park 3. The path it does want you to take forced me into 2 tutorial fights and a mini-boss. Not a ton of fights, but I still feel like 1 tutorial is more than enough in a game like Yakuza. But after I beat the mini-boss, the rest of Kamurocho finally opened up to me, and I clumsily fell into 1 more fight with some random street punks before finally making my way to my beloved Public Park 3 and completing the run in a reasonable but disappointing 16 minutes and 41 seconds. Yakuza 5 is the first game on the list that I haven't already beaten, meaning it is the first game that I'm going into with no prior knowledge. Well, technically I never played Yakuza 1, but I did play the remake, and I think that should still count. This is also the only game in the series that starts in a location that I don't recognize, which means that I actually had to explore it and plan my route prior to starting my run. And let me just say, that was a pain in the ass. There were no public parks listed on the map, which leads me to believe that this area just doesn't have any, and I also never found any, so we'll consider this case closed. But you know what I did find? This Zen garden that doesn't have any grass, and this cute little patio area that does have grass, but there's also an invisible wall stopping me from touching it. I also found this grassy area by the road with another invisible wall stopping me from touching it. I also found this other grassy area where I ran into the exact same problem and possibly also the exact same wall. Clearly, this strategy was not going to work. What I needed to do was progress through the game until I could get back to Kamurocho and my sweet, sweet Public Park 3. So that became the plan. The new plan. The only plan. The only way I could possibly see myself finishing this run. Except for one small thing. You see that? That right there? Do you see Kiryu's foot touching that tall grass that's just slightly reaching over the curb? That's right, baby! He's touching grass! That counts! I don't care! Shut up! So now that I had an actual route planned and the ability to actually touch some grass, the run ended up taking exactly 4 minutes and 4 seconds. That's right, baby! We got a 4 for 4 just like Wendy's! Yakuza 6 is the other game on this list that I haven't played yet. It opens with an extremely skippable cutscene, followed by the introduction of the cleanest UI in the entire franchise, and a tutorial fight that just does not need to be 2 minutes long. Then they hit me with this scene that I'm sure is very poignant and meaningful if you're actually watching the cutscenes, but to someone like me who doesn't know what's going on, it's just ridiculous. Then I skipped like a billion more cutscenes, including this one where Haruka's in like prison or something, only to realize that this game actually opens at Kiryu's orphanage in Okinawa. This is what I was talking about earlier! Look! There's grass everywhere! There's some right there, there's some right here, there's grass! And so the grass percent run of Kiryu's final entry as series protagonist, except for all those spin-offs they keep releasing, ends in just under 4 minutes. But more importantly, look at his ass. Oh my gosh, what the fuck? Why does it look so good? And speaking of things that I don't understand, why does he walk like that? And finally, Yakuza Like a Dragon is the most recent entry in the mainline Yakuza series as of the making of this video. I mean, it won't be the most recent entry for much longer because Infinite Wealth is coming out in early 2024, so maybe I should have waited until then to make this video. Or maybe I should have made it 7 months ago when people actually cared about this sort of thing. Either way, 7 is our lucky number, and Yakuza 7 is the last game on our list. Before attempting to run Like a Dragon, I assumed that it would be one of the fastest runs in the video because the game lets you skip all of the cutscenes and dialogue without any restrictions, and the opening segment takes place entirely in Kamurocho. Would anyone like to guess how long this run took? The game starts with some extremely skippable cutscenes, one of the least optimized loading screens I have ever experienced, and a minute-long chase sequence followed by a tutorial fight that introduces the player to the series' new turn-based combat system. Keep this in mind because it is going to ruin my life. Don't get me wrong, I love turn-based RPGs, but I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that their combat is known for being fast. The game then sent me to complete tasks and skip cutscenes all over Kamurocho while conveniently keeping me locked out of any of the streets that had parks. It was starting to feel like this was going to take forever, but at around 15 minutes I saw the light at the end of the tunnel. I skipped yet another cutscene and found myself in the middle of my hallowed, my cherished, my beloved Public Park 3! And that was it! The run was over. At 15 minutes and 6 seconds, I made grass percent in Yakuza Like a Dragon. Except for one small thing. There were no grass textures in this park. Even when I raised my graphic settings to the highest level the game offered, there was still no grass. My precious park had been robbed of its prized possession, and I had been robbed of my 15-minute run. It was pretty safe to assume that if there were no grass textures at this park, then there wouldn't be any at any of the other parks in Kamurocho either. So I decided to play the game until I got sent to Yakuza Like a Dragon's main location of Yokohama. I knew that there would be grass in Yokohama. What I didn't know was just how long it would take to get there. I had to fight some goons, find a beef bowl shop, take the fall for a crime I didn't commit, go to prison for over a decade. I can't quite put my finger on it, but I've definitely heard this story somewhere before. I got out of prison 18 years later, went to the same graveyard that saved my ass twice before, and hey, look, grass! Only I can't touch it because the game is turn-based now and you can't walk during fights anymore. And that's just awesome. These guys can touch the grass though, which feels fair. I went back to Kamurocho, got in a lot of fights. They were all turn-based, so it took forever. I'll never understand how people can speedrun Pokemon. I went to an underground maze where it was genuinely impossible to avoid getting into fights, and at this point it was after 4 AM and I just wanted to go to bed, so every fight made me just a little bit more irritated. I finally got out of the maze, climbed the building, snuck into another building via the rooftop, and found myself in the game's first boss fight. A fight that I am ashamed to say took me more than one try. In hindsight, all the fights probably would have gone by a lot faster if I had picked an easier difficulty, but I really didn't think I was gonna get into this many fights. And after beating Sawashiro, I skipped enough cutscenes to wake up in Yokohama, where I made a mad dash to the nearest planter and touched grass in 59 minutes and 22 seconds. Ugh. Fuck me, dude. The grass is a little hard to see because this game's graphics murder my computer, but I finally did it. I reached grass percent in every mainline Yakuza game. So, all in all, Yakuza 0 took 17 minutes and 45 seconds, Yakuza 1 took 39 minutes and 56 seconds, Yakuza 2 took 11 minutes and 26 seconds, Yakuza 3 took 51 seconds, Yakuza 4 took 16 minutes and 41 seconds, Yakuza 5 took 4 minutes and 4 seconds, Yakuza 6 took 3 minutes and 59 seconds, and Yakuza Like a Dragon took a downright insane 59 minutes and 22 seconds. The shortest run was obviously Yakuza 3, and the longest, by a surprisingly large but also unexpectedly small margin, was Yakuza Like a Dragon. And and all of the runs together total to 2 hours, 34 minutes, and 4 seconds. I am wasting my life! And honestly, a lot of these times probably could have been a lot shorter. I made a lot of mistakes, I had a few misinputs, I was a little bit slow on a few mashes and cutscene skips, I got into fights that I didn't need to get into. Some of these games almost definitely have better routes, and I definitely could have shaved a few seconds off of my runs of Yakuza 3 and 6. So improvements can definitely be made, and if you want to try and make those improvements and end up beating any of my times, let me know how you do in the comments below. I just love when people tell me that they're better than me at things that I worked really hard at. Anyway, outros are just as stupid as intros, so make sure to like and subscribe, comment and share, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks for watching. What the fuck is that? I'm such a loser. What the fuck? What the fuck?